Hello everybody, it is Road to Recovery and we are here to do a video. It's called Recovery Strategies of Porn Addicts. This had started up as a live feed for my chat series, Monday Morning Chats. And unfortunately, because of my inability to use OBS correctly, I decided to re-record this as I had prepared all these materials, and we're going to try this again, except this time it's going to be a nice controlled recording. All right, so today we're going to be talking about the actual process for building a recovery strategy and being able to implement that. It's a simple process, or it's a fairly simple process, but there's some things to consider. There's definitely some minutia to consider when trying to build a recovery plan, and I'm trying to provide to you a means by which you can get started, something that throws it all together. You get to digest the information and get to progress through everything. So from here, what we're going to do is talk about key topic areas on how to start the recovery plan. The first thing is accepting that you have a problem. Then we're going to be talking about the minutia of how to build a recovery plan. That includes goals, mapping triggers, coping strategies, cognitive challenges, social support, consequences, and healthy activities. And finally, we'll talk about how to build a recovery network. So the first process in all of this is accepting that you have a problem. And this is perhaps the most important part. It's the keystone part. No matter where you are inside of their process, you can always fall back onto the accepting of a problem to remind you where you started and to help guide your goals for why you're going to the place you're going. If anything falls through, you're feeling a moment of weakness, you can at least go back to, hey, why did I start all this in the first place? Why is this so important? Because there's going to be denial mechanisms that will be eating away at you over time. You'll feel the devil on your shoulder telling you to do things, and it's figurative, of course. But this is part of what happens. You start to get a little weak over time. The addiction will eat away at you, and you're going to need that reminder of, man, why was I here in the first place? Time does that over time, over the succession of periods. You're going to feel weakness or not as motivated as you were in the past. Always get back down to the root. Why are you here in the first place? Acceptance means acknowledging the truth. The truth of why you're here in the first place, whatever that reason is. You came here, or you came to this for a reason. Remember what that reason was. It should serve as the catalyst for change. So everything that you build off of, all of your goals, your routines, your new habits, it all starts from this one moment. Acceptance is the first step in finding a solution. Doesn't matter if we're talking about an engineering project or whether we're talking about, navigating a boat over the ocean. You're always starting from one spot to say, this is the problem statement. This is the reason I need to do this following set of routines. So for building a recovery plan, you need to have that problem statement. Why am I here in the first place? Right? That's what this does. And with all of this, acceptance is key to breaking through all the denial mechanisms that you'll hit, and you'll hit plenty of them. You've probably been living in a lot of denial for a good portion of your life, saying, oh, this isn't so bad, or everybody else does this. Whatever that mechanism is and whatever that voice is telling you, this is going to be the starting point at defeating that mechanism. So building a recovery plan starts with goals. I'm going to give you some examples here. This does not reflect all the possible reasons or avenues by which you would be setting goals. This is just supposed to be a small example, and you can think about your own goals and set your own goals. The key to recovery plans is that no two recovery plans are always alike. Some can be very similar, but you're going to have different reasons, motivations, necessities, problems that follow you, and your goals will be unique to who you are as a person. So your goals shouldn't look exactly like mine. Even people that have the exact same identical problems tend to have different types of recovery plans. So always keep that in mind. This is all about you. So some of the reasons could be increased self-care, reduce recreational use of electronic devices, normalize sleep schedule, regular workout routine, more time with family and friends, and the elimination of porn use. And you'll notice that I have the elimination of porn use last on this list. It should never be your number one goal, right? Why is that? Because that's the negation of an activity. It's easier for you to be able to track what you do as opposed to what you don't do, right? So you can easily track how much time you're spending with your family. You'll know that right away. You'll feel that right away. You can track how much time you're spending in bed. Are you getting 6 to 8 hours of sleep? That's a simple question, right? You can answer those things. All of these things have something similar. I like to call them SMART goals, and I'm not going to explain the acronym here. You can Google it on your own. But SMART goals will help define the mechanism by which you're setting these individual goals and letting you know whether or not they're quantifiable, measurable, time-based. They set all the standards by which you can see whether or not a goal is actually appropriate or not. Look up SMART goals if you have the time. But for now, know that goals and goal setting are part of the recovery plan. Now, I did a video earlier that described how I mapped triggers in risky situations. All I'm doing is I'm including a screenshot so you can see how the columns look. You have any spreadsheet program, open this up, you can start labeling the columns in there and start tracking things right away. The whole point is to be able to map out the triggers for all of your risky situations or anything else that's involved in the addiction. So once you do this, you set up a queue, you set up a routine, and you can put the reward in there if you choose to. Keep in mind that this is, as you start setting this system up, it's active, it's constantly changing, and you're constantly updating this. The purpose of this is to give you general awareness about when situations happen. So throughout the course of your days, you're probably going to discover that triggers are always in your environment. You're discovering new ones constantly. And sometimes those triggers aren't so easy. You would think that, oh, okay, well, maybe just looking at something gets me triggered, and that's entirely true. I've had environmental triggers, but being in certain locations, sometimes triggers can be smell, sometimes they can be texture. Whatever those triggers are that are unique to you, as you discover them and a craving happens the second you hit the trigger, write it down. The key here is to record all of your triggers, and as you're writing this down, you're cognitively taking it in, you'll be able to process, oh, this is the sort of thing I need to look out for. This is the sort of thing I need to avoid. And when you start getting sophisticated at this, what you could start doing is start putting replacement habits with these triggers. So once you have identified a trigger inside of your environment, what can you do to kind of mitigate that situation? What's going to be the best course of activity or action that's going to help you reduce or eliminate that craving? And we'll get into some possible things on that in a bit here with the coping strategies. But for the time being, if you don't have that replacement habit yet, don't worry about it. Just get the trigger in there. Keep this document active, just keep it rolling and keep updating it, because sometimes you'll discover over the course of time the triggers change. They always do. Coping strategies. I'm giving you a couple of examples here, and I've given some nice clean columns, but you don't have to be this organized about it. You could just simply start brainstorming things that you know would be good examples. I fold in a lot of things like cognitive behavior therapy into mine. Any coping strategy that you find and identify that can help you take your attention away for a few minutes and help rectify the craving whenever it occurs. If it works for you, throw it in there. Sometimes you may not even know if the thing works. You're just going to throw it in there anyway and try it out. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. This too is an active list. You take things off, you add things in, see how it fits. list as many coping strategies as you can. And I would say that, probably try to keep it as general interest as you possibly can. If you have an interest in biking, put biking down. If you have an interest in hiking, throw hiking in. If there's things you'd like to try out, like, meditation or yoga, or, if you're an artist, accomplished artist, you want to start, drawing, or let's just say you're good at an instrument, throw all of that in, see how it works for you. If it doesn't turn out to be a good coping strategy for you, just take it off the list and add something else, right? The whole point is you just brainstorm as much as you possibly can. On the preceding document that I gave you, where you're putting, your coping strategies in right next to whatever the triggers might be, you add and remove things as you see fit. Sometimes you might have a trigger with 2 or 3 coping strategies. If the first one doesn't work, you just go down to the next one. That's how this game is played. And so you keep working at this document over time. Don't think you'll ever get it perfect the first time. It's a work in progress. It's always a work in progress. Next thing we'll be talking about are cognitive challenges. What are cognitive challenges? Through the process of your growing and your development, there are times where you're going to hit some problems in your thinking that will restrict or eliminate your capability of being able to do things clearly or be able to execute whatever task you're trying to accomplish. And these blocks that happen to us, they're all inside of our mind. These are things that we've either built for coping with coping with whatever stresses are inside of our lives, or from just trying to stop us from being hurt, whether it's emotionally or physically. All these things that we've kind of developed, they act as a mechanism to protect us, but in reality, sometimes they can actually hurt us from being able to advance. Cognitive distortions are internal mental filters or biases that increase our misery, fuel our anxiety, and make us feel bad about ourselves or just about things in general. Our brains are continually processing lots of information, and with this, our brains are seeking shortcuts to cut down on our mental burdens. Distortions happen over time, right? They're actually built into your framework. Everybody deals with a cognitive distortion of the sorts. And so what we're trying to do when we come and confront these things is we want to challenge these cognitive distortions. So these are cognitive challenges. I'm going to list 15 for you. Now, why are we doing this? The whole point in here is to not learn what these 15 are and, do a quiz on it or whatever. I'm going to talk about this. I want you to listen. Listen to these cognitive distortions. Now, this is not all of them. This is not a complete list. Call this the top 15. Listen to what's happening and listen to the reframed thought. The idea is if you hear any of these distortions that sound familiar to you, pay attention to both that and the reframed thought. Maybe just jot it down. You might be using this later. Now, why are you going to use this later? Because when you start getting the stinking thinking, when you start hearing these cloudy thoughts inside of your mind, you will know what to do next. You'll know how to retrain the brain and to correct the thinking so that you're not dragging yourself down back into the addiction. Let's do it. The first one is called polarized thinking. An example. I received an A- on an exam when I typically used to receive A+ grades, only I feel like a failure. The reframed thought. I didn't do so well on the exam as I had hoped, but an A- is still really good grade and I'm grateful for it. Pretty simple, right? Number 2, mental filtering. The example thought. I received my employee performance review, but I can't stop thinking about one negative comment my manager made about me. The reframed thought. I was lacking in one area of my review, but I performed well in other aspects of my job, and my manager did praise me for great work ethic. Number 3, overgeneralization. The example. I failed this exam. I feel like such a failure. I don't think I'm smart enough to take this class. I will probably just fail it. The reframed thought. I didn't pass this one exam, but in the past I have always found a way to come back from a failed exam. I will work harder and try again the next time. Number 4, jumping to conclusions. Example, I visited a friend, but her expression towards me seems negative. She doesn't want to see me. She claims she was sick, but I feel like she was trying to avoid me. The reframed thought. She could be really sick and wants rest. Other reasons she wouldn't want to see me, self-consciousness about her appearance or worried she is contagious. Number 5, catastrophizing. There is a lot of traffic on my way to work. I'll never get there on time. The reframed thought. I may be late, but I will get there safely. In the meantime, I can enjoy the radio. Number 6, personalization. My partner and I showed up late to a dinner party. Everyone seemed mad about not having a good time because we showed up late. I should have left earlier. The reframed thought. Even though we were late, I cannot control how people feel. There could be other factors that contributed to people not enjoying the party before arriving. Number 7, blaming. I blame my significant other for relationship issues we've experienced. Why am I always treated this way? Only if they put more effort into the relationship. A relationship takes two people to make it work. I am equally responsible for the issues we have. I should apologize for my mistakes and move forward. Labeling. Someone at work made a mistake that had severe consequences for other tasks. Why are people so stupid? Now I should redo everything. The reframed thought. I understand mistakes can happen. I will spend extra effort into fixing it, but it's not the end of the world. I know they are capable of doing better next time. Always being right. I didn't agree with the way the task was being performed. I told them to do it. I didn't know why they didn't listen to me. It should be done my way. The reframed thought. I don't really know which method is better until I try it for myself. Maybe we can go with their method this time and see how it works. Should statements. I should stop being lazy and exercise today. The reframed thought. I would prefer to exercise today, but I'm not feeling up for it. If I don't exercise today, I can exercise the next day. Emotional reasoning. I don't feel alone and uncared for because my partner does not want to spend time with me and instead is working overtime. The reframed thought. My partner is working overtime because they are busy at work, not because they do not care for me. When they are not busy, they spend time with me. Control fallacies. I feel overwhelmed and anxious due to the coronavirus. I feel like I have no control to protect myself or my family from the virus. The reframed thought. I recognize I cannot control how the virus spreads, but I can reduce my risk by protecting myself, such as face masks and washing hands regularly. Fallacy of change. I feel my partner is perfect in every other way except a few minor things. If I make them change those things, it will make us so happy. The reframed thought. I can suggest those changes, but I understand that this isn't necessary to make me happy. If they choose not to change, I'll still be happy the way that they are. Fallacy of fairness. A friend of mine takes a lot of money at their job doing the similar things to me. Why don't I make the same amount? It's not fair that they get paid more. The reframed thought. I may not make as much money, but I am grateful for the job I have. There could be many reasons why I don't make as much. Number 15. Heaven's reward fallacy. A colleague was promoted over me, but I believe I worked harder and deserved that promotion. The reframed thought. I would have been nice to get It would have been nice to get a promotion, but I can't control others' decisions. I can let my boss know of my hard work, and maybe I will be considered next time. All right, so with all of those cognitive distortions now in place, let's now talk about what we can do and the consequences of going back to addiction. So it's one thing to know how to observe your behaviors and how to be able to correctly diagnose when you might be going down the difficult path. But observing the consequences, whether you've already stepped on those consequences or whether it's a continuous iterative process, you may want to bring that back into your cognitive superset. In other words, making sure that it's fresh in your mind and that the consequences are always there. What are some of those consequences? I've stepped in all of these. So, concentration problems, low motivation, depression, social anxiety, negative self perceptions, uh, erectile dysfunction, ED, lowered relationship quality, increased risk of infidelity, financial issues or job loss, difficulty in sexual encounters, negative impact on intimacy and relationships. And if we take a look on the right-hand side here, the reward circuit activation. So this perhaps is, kind of the visualization, and I understand sometimes it's hard for people to wrap their brains looking at a chart, but when we're talking about the production of dopamine and the excitability and your ability to maintain attention, all of these things during your addiction get spiked, so it's at an all-time high. So not only do you have the euphoric effects from not just the dopamine, but all the other hormones involved in sexuality, but that elevates your state, right? And it puts you in an elevated height during your addiction. Everything else you do in your life is not that high, right? You're kind of bebopping around in an oscillation that's waving along. So over time, what happens is that you naturally just want to be in that elevated state because it feels more exhilarating. You're always, into that, and it's satiating for you. And compared to everything else, why wouldn't you want to be in a satiated effect all the time? That is the trap of it, right? That's the trap of it. And so we're trying to constantly remind ourselves that there's consequences to being in this elevated state, which is all those things we just listed. So at the top of your mind, always keep there, I shouldn't be doing this because concentration, low motivation, depression, anxiety. For me, it was panic attacks. So the anxiety went all the way to this is crippling and I'm passing out in restaurants and stuff. So these are things that you just constantly want to keep in the back of your mind, no matter how good the thing may feel, no matter how awesome an experience it might be. The flip side of it is that you could end up, unconscious on a floor. That's my thing, but whatever your thing is, right? There's lots of things I probably don't have listed here that you might be in the top of your list, right? Some people are really big into the ethical and emotional concerns because that's prevalent in their existence. Fine, add that one to the list, make it on the top of the list. But whatever that thing is, whatever the consequences that are important to you, make sure they're on a piece of paper, you have them processed, and you have them stored. Like you're thinking about it constantly, you're reflecting on it constantly. Knowing what the consequences are going to help you stay away from the addiction. Okay, so now we're going to talk about building a recovery network. So we talked about the construction of a document, a recovery plan, right? That recovery plan is going to have all of the cognitive distortions you've been going through. It's going to have all the triggers that you've been going through. It's going to have the reasons why you're inside of the program in the first place or why you've decided to take this course of action. It's going to have all the goals you've done so far. But arguably, central to all of this, the web that keeps everything together is the networking. I could give you a recovery plan and push you off, and you could just deal by this by yourself. And I could never talk to you again. You may not interact with anybody. I think the reality of that situation is that it would be difficult to maintain your sobriety at that point, because there's lots of opportunity for distortions to creep back in, motivation to subside, no accountability. All of those things will eventually weigh on you. And unless you have a super strong determinative personality, likely the chances of you relapsing are going to increase just by the sheer act of not reaching out to other people. So why deny yourself a recovery network? And a lot of people might say, it's like, I don't want to talk about this. This is a little too sensitive. Well, what if I told you that there's a lot of groups out there that all they do is they talk about these things. All they do is talk about these things, right? So I'm going to list a few of them here. I'll talk individually about some of these. There's lots of others that might be out there, maybe through like a church or religious organization that you work through. You're free to explore all of those. I'm going to talk about what I know about, and that's some of these organizations, but reach out to whoever you want to. A recovery network doesn't have to be like an official organization. It could be just people you know. I've had a guy who reached out to college roommates and had built a really successful recovery network just using people he knew at college. Worked for him. Good for him, right? You do whatever you have to do. So let's first talk about Smart Recovery. Smart Recovery is it's an international nonprofit organization that provides assistance to individuals seeking abstinence from addiction. It's basically a la carte. You go there, you go into this organization. They provide you with all the materials. Most of it's just free to use. They do sometimes have some meetups locally, but it's not the type of organization that has regular face-to-face meetups. It's more of a self-access type of thing. Not quite like NoFap, but because it's not huge social interaction. It's more about just providing you the process of recovery and then you executing it. So I would say out of all the things that I've listed here, this is probably the least recovery based, but it is a network and you can tap into it. Then there's NoFap. So everybody's probably familiar with NoFap. Have a great forum out there in terms of a system of communication, not as organized, right? There's no central tenets to NoFap other than not masturbating. But you can get a community. You can, yeah, reach into other people online and be able to see what they're doing, see how they're accessing things, learn from their mistakes, and just talk about your own stuff. So it's a good organization. I personally am not in NoFap myself, but I support anybody who goes to it, and I would say that you would probably be better off if you did try using an organization like them. SAA, Sex Addicts Anonymous, is a organization that's been around for a while. I love SAA. I was in them personally until their local outfit closed up for me. But they probably got one of the best big books out there. Big Book uh, is a central idea, the guide that guides the program itself. It's used by all the 12 steps. So AA has one, NA has one, SAA has one. SAA has got one of the best big books out there. It really does put a lot of good tools in place for anybody who might be a sex or porn addict. Go check them out and check out their literature. I highly do recommend them. Um, SLAA, Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous, is another one who will gladly take porn addicts. It happens to be my base organization. Um, but they are all over the place. And the nice thing about SLAA is that you can usually find them in most locations throughout the United States. Um, I'll label this as a caveat. In my particular area, there were lots of people with my problem when I walked into SLA, even though they may have been 25% of the room, right? People who were porn addicts were 25% of the room. There were still enough people in there where I could get plenty of support for what I was going through. And I generally liked the room, like I liked the people who were inside of it, and I could it was very good for me to be able to be there because I could have open conversations with people. And going through that process of just having conversations, I was more willing and able to be able to share with people about my personal issues. But you may go into an SLA room and discover that, well, there's no one here who is a porn addict. And if you don't find anybody there, you don't have to stick around. But it is an option, and I think they are a really good group, and they happily accept, no matter where you're at, they will happily accept you as an addict, and you can go in inside to work their program. Last one is PAA, Porn Addicts Anonymous. I'm actually actively I've been working inside of their rooms recently, and I'm thinking about starting up my own local chapter for my location. So I would recommend going to go check them out. They're not, I don't think that they're organization, because they're still there's 12, they're 12-step based. They don't have the materials that say like the SAA has. SAA is really big. They've been funded for years. So they've got like really deep literature. PAA is still a little wet behind the ears, but I still think they're a great organization. Like, you can go in at any point and go talk to somebody who's struggling with exactly with what you're struggling with. So, go check them out. These are all great organizations. Again, I've only listed 5 here. There's plenty more organizations that might be out there in your local area. Go look for a recovery network. And the great thing about these is that every single one of them has built-in structure to it. NoFap maybe a little bit less, but a group like SAA really strong. I mean, there's so much material you can get from them. SAA to the point where, like, literally, they can give you basically the formations of a recovery plan. All you got to do is execute it. And there's other recovery plans that are out there. For example, I'm holding up one right here, Facing the Shadow. So, this is an example of literature, and there's plenty of other books that are out there that are like this. That'll step you through a recovery plan itself, and you're free to get one of those types of books and just start executing it for yourself. In addition to seeking a recovery network, what you may want to do is also try to get some psychiatric help. And you can get what's called a CSAT, which is a certified sex addiction therapist, and work with them on a recovery path. And I had my therapist with Facing the Shadow here. I used a therapist in order to help me work through some of my issues, and we would sit down every single week and just talk about it. So therapy can be a part of it. It doesn't have to be part of it, but it can be a part of it. And the beautiful thing about therapy is it also gets you thinking about how you can talk and discuss things that are deep inside and make it easier for that process when you're inside of a room, recovery room. So, if you're building your network, trusted friends are a good place to start. Recovery partners and groups are obviously, ideal. I mean, if you can get into a group that's more people you can talk to, psychiatric professionals, and then, anytime you're inside of a organized group, see if you can get a sponsor. Sponsors are fantastic. They're the seasoned veterans that can kind of talk you through what to do and how to do it, really get you started on the right path. Oh, wow, that was a typo, but get at least one partner who is flesh and blood. Like, don't try doing this thing on yourself, man. Just go out and try to get at least one person you can talk to, right? At bare minimum one. It's one thing if you're a nofap and you're just chatting all the time, but man, go get coffee with somebody. That's like the best part of my recovery process is I go out on a regular basis and I constantly talk to, my sponsor, my recovery partners. We're constantly going out all the time and we're just talking through things. And once you can have those honest and real conversations, man, it allows you to kind of disarm all the crap that might be going on inside of your head. So with that, when you're building a recovery network, you're going to stop self-isolation. It's a key focus. The addiction exists inside of isolation. Stop self-isolating is stop the addiction. It really is that simple, man. You got to stop self-isolating. And so recovery networks will help you do that. But outside of recovery networks, also I would say trying to seek, I wouldn't say active, but I would say uh, try to increase your socialization. I know some of you are probably introverts, and that's okay. It's okay to be an introvert. I'm not asking you to be an extrovert. You can be introverted and still seek more social cues and start looking for more social opportunities. Maybe inside, you don't have to hate it. I can understand why you're resistant because I'm an introvert myself, but put yourself in more social situations so that you're out there, you're talking, you start getting more comfortable with the experience, and it keeps you out of trouble. No one's asking that you have to like it all the time. Just it could be as simple as maybe going to a ball game, going bowling once in a while. Do something, get yourself out there. Learn how to use lifelines. Wow, what a good thing that is. If you learn how to use a lifeline, man, you know that anybody out there that you have formed in your recovery circle has got your back, and you can call them up no matter what is happening inside of your life. You can call on them, and they can help you out. Lifelines are amazing. Learn how to use them. Have the strength to use them. Know when to use them. This all folds into having a good recovery network. Having honest conversations is the healthiest thing you could ever do, man. As much as I like to harp on like exercise and meditation and going out, man, just having a conversation is so beautiful. And the reason why is because all of the cognitive crap that's inside of your mind might seem like it's really healthy knowledge. Like you might have something inside of you that's been boiling up for a while, and it sounded great when it was inside of your head, but the second it comes out of your mouth, like it leaves your lips, you recognize, wow, that wasn't such a great idea at all. That's why having honest conversations is great because it'll get those things out of your mind. And if I can't tell you how many times I've been either in a room or in just having a conversation with somebody at a diner, and I said something, and the words left in my mouth, and I was like, "Wow, I can't believe I just said that." Whether it was a good thing or a bad thing, but it's the acknowledgement of the fact that, wow, I was just rattling around inside of my mind, and it's there, and it's not what I thought it was, right? How many times does that happen to you? How many times does something that seemed to be either a good idea or just something that you were seized onto because of your emotions and you got it outside of your body and then you heard it and you looked at it and you were just like, wow, 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 this is something I've really got to reflect on. It all starts by having a conversation. Talking out issues is a superior form of reflection, and I really do mean that. Talk things over. You trying to stew on ideas by yourself likely will not evolve too much in terms of how it's going to change your thinking or change your outcomes. But man, you talk things out, then you could start looking at the thing that you've created and saying, hey, you know what? Did I have this right? Is there some way that I can look at or improve this idea? Crap, there's only so many times you can rattle things inside of your brain before, you've stopped doing it because you think it's a good idea or that it's perfect. But sometimes you get out and you start talking with other people, whether it's a sponsor or somebody in your recovery network, and then the thing starts to evolve. And sometimes maybe you discover it's a bad idea, or sometimes you're like, oh, I could build on this, right? Talk it out, man. That's the only way you're going to be able to extend that thing. All right, so we've talked about all the ideas for getting the recovery plan in place. Now it's time to execute. So now you've got to build the thing. I have several Excel spreadsheets that I keep. That's the basis of what I would call the core of my recovery plan. But the recovery plan is the goals, right? We talked about that. It's the tracking of ideas, of talking about what things are triggers or what would institute a craving, having all the things that would potentially be replacement habits, things that we've collected together that we like doing or we think that might be good substitutes, and being able to map that out with all of our triggers. Um, Once we have all that in place and we've built a recovery network, now we have to talk about how to execute that thing. The best thing I can tell you is stay regimented the second you wake up. The second you wake up, right? Every minute of your day or every block of time that's inside of your day should have a purpose. Every block, you know. Early on, when you're going through this recovery phase, you're saying to yourself, what am I going to do now, right? So what did I schedule this time for? Staying regimented is going to stop you from falling into bad habits again. So the second you start losing control over what you should be doing right now, that's when the habit's going to start taking over, because the habit knows what it wants to do. The habit knows what it wants to do. So you have to really stay regimented. And I would suggest that if you can maintain a regimented life, you don't have to get hardcore with, you don't have to be U.S. military regimented, but having basic execution plans. What time is it? What should I be doing right now? What's the task at hand? How long should that task run for? If you can stay inside of that quadrant of, making sure you're on task and you know what you should be doing, over the long term, you greatly reduce any opportunity for triggers to kick your ass, getting lazy on your habits, falling back into bad routines. Stay regimented. That will guarantee you that you're staying on task. Acknowledge your personal victories, and a lot of the programs, a lot of the recovery programs do this by the maintaining of chips, right? So you get, like I say, a 6-month chip. It's like, hey man, you're sober for 6 months, congratulations. um, I have a personal thing about that. I think it's good that it forces people to, hey, pay attention to what your sobriety time is. um, for me, and what I've done with my sponsees, is I say the sobriety time is good. Don't get me wrong. I want to see you acknowledging personal victories are maybe not about the sobriety, but are more related to your goals. Like we talked about the goals in the very beginning. Well, did you get to spend 20 more minutes with your family? Did you get to, spend half an hour more working on that big project that you've been trying to get done? Those are the things. Those are the things I want to see you acknowledge. Those are the personal victories that matter, because now you've taken that time block that was associated to your porn consumption and you've dedicated it now to things that matter. Celebrate those victories. And when we talk about victories, how do you celebrate it? Well, obviously not with your addictive personality, not with the source of your addiction, which happens to be porn. Celebrate it with other things. What's the thing that makes you happy? Is going down and watching a ball game? Does that make you happy? Go down and watch a ball game. Spending a little extra time with the wife, maybe take her out on a date night, go do that. Whatever that thing is that makes you happy. For some people, it's just, hey, every once in a while, I like to have a little piece of chocolate, or maybe cook myself some bacon and eggs, because I normally don't get to do that in the mornings. Make yourself the bacon and eggs, man. Whatever's going to be a good reward for you, find whatever that milestone is, set that milestone up. It's like, I got 6 months of doing family nights where I never did that in the past. And every single night, so we had 6 months straight, we did family night, we played a game, and I did 6 months of spending time with my family, which should be reward in its own right. But if you want to set a reward up for doing that, fine, so be it. Do it. Do that. Set rewards for yourself. Make them healthy rewards. All right, that's all I had. And again, this was all motivated because I had a Monday morning chat, and I had my OBS program not share the actual PowerPoint slides, which made me feel like an idiot. So I'm hoping this will stand as a long running document that you'll be able to go back to and reflect on and be able to use as a resource inside of your own recovery. So I'm hoping this works for you. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, leave them in the comments below. You can access me through my Twitter profile on the top of the page, or through the community box, or you can reach me at my email address, which should be posted above, but it is roadtorecovery11 at yahoo.com. I wish you a good day and a really good new year. Take care of yourself.